Hi, welcome to The Journey. I'm Julieann Hartman, and I am your host, and I love the fact that I can bring you shows that will literally change your life. This is part 2 of the Christine Soule story. Now, if you did miss part 1, you need to go watch it because it's really good, and it's going to lead you up to this point in her life, which is awesome. She was delivered from being a stripper, from being a drug addict, and being trafficked. The story about her and her children is amazing. And the most important part about this is to see what God did with her life when she called out to him. Here's part 2 of the Christine Soule story. Welcome back to The Journey. And I'm so thankful that we have Christine here once again, giving her testimony of what the amazing things that God has done for this woman. And he's no respecter of persons. If he did it for her and he did it for me, he'll do it for anyone. And so we're right in the middle of Christine's story. So if you did not hear part 1, you better get yourself over and watch part 1 because it is compelling, crazy, and part 2 is going to be just as amazing. So thank you so much for coming back for part 2.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you left us with a cliffhanger. Can you please repeat what you said? Because I asked you in the last show, I said, Christine, so God literally stopped you from the trafficking, the stripping, the drugs, the alcohol, and then you said you were also living a gay lifestyle. So how did all that come about?
Well, I think it came from, being raped and just being in an environment where I think that men represented pain for me. Men represented abuse and neglect, abandonment. So, as a stripper, you are with a lot of women, and my best friend that at the strip club, we just had started a relationship. And there were a couple other relationships, I would say, prior to that. But I really felt like, gosh, of course I was made gay. Of course, I was the tomboy. I started my period in a freaking tree with boys in the tree with me. I thought, oh, I hate this girl thing. But, I think that it really just stemmed from brokenness and what men represented for me. And women were safe to me. And so that's why I had begun a gay lifestyle.
So, Christine, can we go back to the rape? So where did this take place?
I was actually, a friend wanted to hang out. So we went to a nightclub, and she was the one who I would get the meth from. And so, and the weird part about that evening was I never, ever did meth in the evening, even in the afternoon. I did it. It was like my shot of coffee, like I said, so I could take care of my children, so I could function during the day. And I was getting kind of drunk, and she said, here, try this. And I remember it actually being even a different color. And I asked her about it, and she said, no, it's just really, really pure. And I thought, oh, okay. So I had taken it, and the next thing you know, I was in a man's house with him on top of me. And
oh my God.
I was terrified. I was weak. I didn't really have a lot of strength in my body. And I see my friend standing there watching this happen. And I was mortified and crying, and I didn't know how to get out of the situation. And then when everything was over, I remember thinking I should run. And then I thought, I don't even know where to run to. And then afterwards, she has me in the vehicle, and we're driving, and she hands me money. And I'm like, what is this?
Well,
And
did you even ask her what the heck is going on? Like in the car?
Yeah. And she actually, she knew I was really upset. And she thought that I was upset about the drugs and not the rape. And I'm like, I was so hurt. And I remember having that money in my hand, and I thought, if I take this, that makes me a prostitute.
Yeah.
If I don't, she just benefited. She just made money from allowing me to be raped.
Oh my
Which
God.
I'm sure she did anyway. But at that moment, that was my thought. And I took that money, and I remembered how much it destroyed me, because I just thought that was like a boundary that would never be crossed. And I know that even in the, stripper world, it intersected, but it was not for me. And I felt like I crossed that. And I, like I had said earlier, I just really kind of started spinning out of control. I literally had so much rage and hate for men. I would go to work and I wanted to claw their eyes out with everything in me.
But yet
And
you were dancing for them, which is very interesting.
Right. I wanted to spit in their face. I wanted to, like I was telling you in the last session, that I would tell people about Jesus and that kind of thing. Oh, not at this point. At this point, I had nothing in me but evil. I had nothing in me but pure rage. And I was desperate.
Thank God you didn't get pregnant.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
And thank God they didn't kill you.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Who knows
where you were.
I had no clue where I was. Who knows what could have happened?
This girl, was she kind of like taking you under her wings? Like, was she older than you? Like,
She was.
How do you get sucked into that?
Yeah. So she was one who did definitely kind of take me under her wings. I started off at one strip club, but I ended up at another. And she was the older, had been there. Let me show you the ropes kind of thing. She was the one who introduced me to the drugs. She provided the drugs. So yeah, she was kind of a bit of a queen bee in this facility. And I looked up to that.
So, and again, forgive me now, where did the rape come in? Is after the twins?
Yes, after the twins. The twins were probably close to 2 at that time.
Okay. So when you went home, could you talk to anybody about what just happened?
Yes, I told their dad immediately what happened. And I gave him the money because I didn't want it. I said he bought a wave runner. And
did he want to kill the guy? I mean, did he at least want to go kill the guy?
No, he called me a prostitute.
Oh no.
Yeah. And anytime he was upset or wanted to throw something in my face, I was called a prostitute as a result.
So again, do you guys do anything as a family? Do you go on family walks? Do you go to the beach? Like, what was your day-to-day life like?
No.
None of the
No. I went to the park with the kids. I did that.
You didn't do anything as a family?
No. In fact, what I did as a family is I went to the gal. So he worked days. He disappeared a lot over the weekends. I worked nights, so we really didn't see each other a lot. When we did, it wasn't.
Where would he go? Any idea?
Yeah, that I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on there. But where I did life and where my kids did life is that we hung out with the friend that I was having the affair with.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what we did. So that's where we would go to the parks and we would go to activities and water parks, and all of that was with her.
Okay. And now, okay, so how do you if you weren't able to talk to anybody, or I mean, like really, like let's say a therapist or something about the whole rape thing, I mean, do you just like shove that away in your memory and you decide to deal with it later? Like, how do you deal with that the next day, the day after, especially when you're also being called a prostitute too? And you don't have Jesus at this moment either.
Right. I would say pre-Jesus, it was extremely difficult for me. Like I said, I had pure rage in me. I stole, I lied, I cheated. I mean, you name it, I did it. And I do remember there was one moment where one of my friends, she actually was a neighbor. She helped me from the time that Melissa was born. She was an angel for me at the time. And I remember getting into her car one day and she had this tape playing. This is how long ago it was a cassette tape. And I go, what is that? And she goes, oh, she says, it's my pastor's message. And she ejected it from the cassette. And I said to her, I go, I'm confused. I go, your pastor's on a tape? And she goes, well, yeah, they record the messages and stuff. And I was like, really? And I kept asking her questions. Now she knew my situation. She knew what I was going through. And I opened the door. I swung the door wide open for her to tell me about Jesus. And do you know, she closed the door shut. She had the opportunity. She knew how broken I was. And I think she felt, she would never want to hear it. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't brave enough.
Yeah, but that happens.
I gave her, yes, I couldn't believe it. And I had many months of still a lot of pain. And what's interesting, I just discovered, just when I told you about my story where I fell to my knees and I gave my life, I totally surrendered my life to Jesus. Do you know, at the strip club that I was working at, right next to it, when I would go to work, Benny Hinn was doing these huge crusades.
Wait, okay, and so you got to tell me, where was this? In LA?
In Anaheim, California.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I just remember hearing about and thinking about, and I never stepped foot in those crusades.
So were they at a church or were they at like a convention center? Where were they?
I think it was at the Anaheim Convention Center. I think, I'm not sure where it was.
And what year is this now?
So this would have been approximately, the 94.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just kind of giggle at that now. This is a pretty recent discovery. And I thought, you know what? People were coming to the knowledge of Christ outside of that arena. I really believe there were praying people there. I'm sure it was right next to the strip club. I'm sure that they were praying for salvation for those women at the strip clubs.
Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing?
It's so amazing. Sometimes we think we're doing things for nothing. Yeah. We're not seeing results because we're such a result oriented, like I got to see. But God just says, pray. Yeah. And, we don't know what happens from the minute it leaves our mouth. And we got to be careful of trying to see the results, because if I don't see results, I'm not going to keep doing something I don't see results in. But his word never comes back to him void.
That's it.
And you are a perfect example of that.
Mm.
Wow. And you know what? People sometimes are like, oh, is that? I know for me, when I first saw Benny, and I'm like, what is that thing? He goes like that, and all these people fall down. Like, what is that? I had no idea. Matter of fact, I asked our pastor, is that real? Because, again, when you know nothing about anything, and you're 37 years old, so it's not like you're 15, you're older, you're like, okay, that's a little wacky. And I remember our pastor said, no. She said, I've seen it with firsthand with my eyes. So no matter what was going on the inside, it was literally the reverberation was going way out to the city. And look at what happened with you. Wow. All right. So now we know there's another kid not too long, like 6 years after the twins. So where are we in your life at this point?
Okay, so
you have a relationship. Your husband is kind of not there.
yeah. So I really started making a choice to live a life for Jesus. And, I started going to church. It was me and my 3 kids in my mini skirt. Didn't quite fit in, but you know what? I kept going. And I kept wanting to serve Jesus and know more about Jesus. And I ended up getting divorced. I moved from California back to Utah. And while I was in Utah, just really continued to seek him. I ended up going to a different church. And actually prior to that, I had met a guy, and he just hung out with a group of girls. By the way, if any man tried to approach me, I would just pounce on them and still attack them at this point, because I no longer was living a gay lifestyle, but I was not prepared to trust men. And so there was this one guy who just kept being there with all these other friends that were girls, and they were safe. And all of a sudden he kind of started to become kind of safe. And I remember at one point I kind of bounced around. I was sheltered homeless is what they would call it. I didn't have a home. I would kind of just bounce from couch to couch in whatever place would take me, with 3 kids.
How do you do that? Can you unpack that a little bit? I know that it was, it sounds like nothing now, but that's pretty crazy. So it was people that you knew?
Yeah, just friends that thank God would tolerate me, long enough to
church too.
Not really from the church, but just friends that I had, from the past growing up, or new friends that I had met, were kind and patient, and I could stay there for so long. One friend I stayed at for several months. She had a bedroom downstairs that we could have. And then I kind of just landed at my mom's basement, and it was just a bedroom. Is all it was one room, and it was 3 kids and me in a queen size bed. And I remember one day I fanned out all my bills on the bed, and I just thought, I can't even put a dent in any of this. And I don't even know where to begin. And I sat there and I thought, God really saved me that time before. I wonder if he can help me with this. And I had $40 to my name. And the only person I knew that went to church was that one guy who kept hanging out with that whole group of people. And he went to church. And I quit going to church because I was just hurt by the church. And
in what way? What do you mean by that?
In what way? I felt very rejected.
Okay.
Yeah, I felt rejected. I felt ostracized. I was a single mom with 3 kids, and that I just didn't really fit in. And so I took my search for Jesus to my Bible, and just sought him on my own. And so anyways, I'm sitting down with it, with my bills, and I get a check, and I write it for $40, and it's a blank check. And I went up to that guy and I said, hey, do you mind just giving this to your church? And he said, yeah, no problem. He thought nothing of it. He had no idea it was my last penny to provide for my children. And do you know, I wish I would have written down what all took place in how God provided for me. But you know, I never even had a late payment. Mm. Every detail was covered. And I mean, I was a girl who, you know, the only job qualifications I had wouldn't even pay my childcare for 3 kids.
So and before that though, what were you working though? And like when you're staying around in people's homes, and what would you do with the kids? Well, if you were working.
Yeah, I actually started working at a biker bar. and I was a bartender. and mind you, never drank again, right? I stopped drinking right then and there when God saved me. But I worked in a biker bar. I had no idea how to do like mixed drinks. Yeah. If they wanted something in a blender, I would say, oh, I'm sorry, the blender is broken. But you know, in that moment, I want to tell you, the man that I married was that guy that I gave the $40 to. Ah. Is that amazing?
That is amazing.
Yeah. And so we have been together for 23 years. Oh. We have 2 beautiful daughters, in addition to our amazing 3. He's been dad to all 5. And he's incredible. He's the love of my life and my absolute hero.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So now when you were, do you not remember all the things that happened after that $40, or you just know like you never had to, you know, scramble for money again?
Yeah. I had debt that was canceled. I had people just doing things for me, buying me groceries. I sold some jewelry, but you know, I never lacked. I never went without, and that was just but by the grace of God. And you know, He always took care of me. And there's so much that I don't remember. I do step back and go, how did that even happen? So.
Wow, that is so great. Christine, what an amazing story. I mean, so now what do you do? What are all your kids doing now? Are they, obviously, we're, 30. Well, I know you're a grandmother, which
I am.
Freaks me out. But, how have your kids' lives just prospered in this?
Yeah. So my oldest, who's almost 30, she owns a photography business, and her husband is a cinematographer. And they have our 7-month-old grandbaby, and they're amazing, breathtaking couple, love Jesus. My twin boys, one of them owns a construction company, and the other one is works in construction as well, heavy equipment kind of construction. And then my 22-year-old, she is going to school to be a counselor, and her husband is going to school to be a welder. And then I have my 11-year-old, and they're amazing. So yeah, they're great, living life. And
have you like shared your story with them? I mean, obviously the 3 kind of lived it with you, but obviously they wouldn't know all the details. Right. Do your kids know a lot of the story?
I had a real stumbling block in actually writing Broken and Beautiful. And the reason being was, how will my kids handle that story? How will they take that? And for years, I shared with them, but then for years I still wouldn't share it with others. Not because I was afraid of sharing it, because I was concerned about how my kids would handle that. Right. And finally my kids started saying, Mom, you need to write a book. And I was like, okay, then I guess I don't have that as an excuse anymore. So they it's my story, and you know, my daughter remembers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She remembers a lot, where my boys, I don't think, really remembered anything. And so her perspective is very different. But yeah, they're loving and supportive, and
That's so great. You know, we've, since I do a lot of interviews with people that have had, you know, certain things happen in their past, and the biggest thing for that for the women is, you know, what I put my kids through. So, you know, because obviously God has completely freed you of
yeah.
everything. So, did you have to deal with that at all, based on the guilt or any of the shame or any of that stuff? And how did you get rid of all that?
Wow, you nailed it. That was absolutely my greatest struggle. You asked how I survived through things. How did I get past things? When I gave my life to Jesus, he redeemed me. It
Mm.
it is supernatural what he did in my life. But my greatest struggle, the thing that still really hurt, was that I, you know, I made choices and I suffer the consequences, but now my kids have to suffer consequences
Mm.
because of my choices. And that was my greatest pain, is that to see them suffer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was hard. You nailed it.
Well, and praise God that, you know, the whole family has been redeemed. And, you know,
Yeah.
I just, that could have been a generation of just horrific life, you know, from yours to your kids to their kids. But Jesus, God stopped it in its
Mm,
tracks. And what
yeah.
I love is someone like you. I think you were just waiting for something like Jesus.
Yeah.
Because you weren't, you know, some people, you know, you weren't a bad person. You were just misled. You were
Yeah.
misguided, you
I
know,
was broken.
and you didn't have a savior. And all you needed was just that one moment with him.
That's
And look
it.
at now the legacy that you're leaving,
Mm.
or you're living, and you will leave. So now tell me about your nonprofit.
Yeah. So, um, kind of a crazy story. I'm driving to go pick up something, and God says, turn the car around. Actually, I'll tell you, it was to go pick up gold dust to do kintsugi art.
Okay.
And kintsugi art is something that um, absolutely struck me. It's the meaning for the name of my book, Broken and Beautiful. Kintsugi art. Are you familiar with it?
No.
It's where you take a piece of broken um, ceramic, and where it would really be deemed worthless and trash, it's repaired with gold. And so it actually makes the piece far more valuable
Oh my
with the
gosh.
brokenness. And so what we do in life is we reject the brokenness. We try to get past the brokenness, forget about the brokenness. But I say, no, use the brokenness to allow it to glorify God and to be redeemed in your life. And so I was actually making some kintsugi art for my daughter's class project. And I had made it before. I knew where the gold dust was. I knew where the whole kit was. At third drawer down, I got all the stuff out of it. No gold dust. And so I'm like, oh. And so I tore apart my entire kitchen looking for this gold dust. I go to the store to go get some gold dust, and I see and I'm driving down the road, and actually God says to me, turn the car around, go talk to that woman. I'm like, what woman? And sure enough, there's a woman sitting there. And so I pull the car around, I get out, and I said, tell me your story. And she starts telling me things like, when she was 18, she had her first daughter. Less than 2 years later, she had identical twin boys. She was a drug addict, married to a drug dealer. She was abused. She was, you name it. It was like my story. And I sat there like kind of freaked out. And she goes, yeah, one of my daughters was born without her esophageal flap being developed. And I'm like, okay. Now I'm really freaked out because that is an incredibly rare thing to have. Random bit of information to share. And one of my daughters was born without her esophageal flap being developed.
What?
Yes. I get into the car and I just start ugly crying, like snot running down my nose. And I'm like, Lord, what is it that caused me to run to Jesus and she ran to heroin, and our stories became very different? And in my car, I'm like, what God says to me, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, what? And God instantly reminded me of this Bible study that I was teaching, where I said, quit whining about it, quit complaining about it. You go be the difference you want to see in the world. And I sat there in the car going, whoa, you want me to do something about this? And God reminds me of this building that was totally vacant for years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? And so I'm like, you want me to house women? And God says to me, as clearly as we're talking, they need 4 things. They need Jesus. They need someone to believe in them. They need training and education. And they need an opportunity. And in that moment in my car, I said, yes, Lord, I will do it. And so we've started a nonprofit organization. It's called Providence Heights. And we are a training center. We are not a shelter. We are preventative. For me, what really became my passion is all I needed was an opportunity. All I needed was a chance to breathe, to get on my feet, to work hard. I was willing and able to do whatever it took to provide for my babies. I just needed a chance. Yeah. And so our focus is to provide housing for women, but we'll stair step them. And it's a year program with 3-month increments. And we will charge rent after the 3rd month. And we'll teach them life skills. How do you balance a checkbook? Savings? What's an IRA? Things like most adults don't even know. And so we will also help with education and their training and really establishing them, becoming a family, a community, and getting them on their feet and then launching them into their lives, into success. So that's what we're doing. We are in search of a facility right now. So we haven't started yet, but we have been well established. You know, I was crying out to God one day and I said, God, I said, every day that we don't have a building is a day these women and children don't have a home. And I was like, I don't mind waiting, but this I have a problem with. And what God spoke to me was, I'm building a foundation that will hold a skyscraper. And so that has been our focus, is create our programs, processes, procedures, establish who we are as an organization, really come in strong. You know, I tell people, like, what I hate about nonprofits is that they act like a nonprofit. And I say that because they have a real poverty mindset. They have a real kind of meager mindset, where our whole philosophy is sustainability. And in fact, we'll be creating revenue source so that we don't have to constantly go to donors, and we won't need government. And so that's really one of our big focuses as who we are as an organization.
Well, Christine, that is awesome. Wow.
I love it.
Well, I mean, we'll put up all the links and stuff so that people can find you. And
awesome.
So just for a recap of now where the family's at. So your dad passed away.
Yes.
And your mom is still alive.
Correct.
And your relationship is great with her.
She's amazing. She's my hero.
How about your sister?
haven't really spoke. We've met on a couple occasions. Very, very strange. That was good. So,
You know, what I just love is that God doesn't just redeem that much. I mean,
yeah,
it's all of it. And
right.
we still have yet to see all the redemption that's still going to come into play.
Absolutely.
Based on that one day where you cried out to him.
That's it. And, let me tell you too, my father, I sat down with him and I just needed to forgive him for my past. And I had hopes of how he would respond. And, I would say they weren't the picture book story, but they were good for me. And I had such peace. Forgiveness is really about you being set free. You're freeing them, and that's an amazing and beautiful thing. But forgiveness is for you to be able to be set free, to grow, and to live the life that God's called you to. You're stunting your growth if you can't forgive. And so I had the opportunity to really forgive him and release all of that. And about 2 months later is when he died. And I'm so grateful that I sat down. And so I would say to anyone listening, if you have unforgiveness, and you'll know it because it'll pop into your mind, you'll know that person. And sometimes you need to continue to do it. Sometimes it needs to be in person. Sometimes it needs to be in prayer. But forgive, because that's for you to grow. I'm so grateful I had an opportunity to forgive him.
Christine, you are so right. Forgiveness, I am convinced that unforgiveness creates sickness
Absolutely.
in people's hearts, and then it goes into the body. And so that was so awesome that you were able to forgive your dad, and listen, sometimes, the response from the parent or the person that we have forgiven is not what we think it's going to be. But it's okay because you cleared your heart. And that was my situation too, that my father act like nothing had ever happened. And so when I'm trying to tell him how much I have forgiven him, he said, "For what? What are you forgiving me for?" And so, but thank God, but for Jesus, that we're going to glorify him no matter what. And when he's glorified, everything else is small potatoes.
Amen.
Compared to him. So what a wonderful life, though, that you are leading now with your amazing husband and your family. And I'm just so thankful that we reconnected and that you came on this show. And I know that you are going to bless a lot of people. We covered a lot of things that should never even happen to one individual, in a lifetime. And so I'm just thankful that you gave us this time, and it's going to be, just a blessing to so many. And so I appreciate you so much, and tell your whole family thank you for shutting the house down while we were doing it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. You're such a blessing. Thank you for doing this and impacting people's lives.
Oh, I'm telling you, it has just been the most effortless, but the most meaningful thing that I've done. And isn't that just like God, right?
Just like God.
To make it so effortless, but to make it so impacting in people's lives. So we thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you so much for joining us with the journey. You guys, where you come, and this is the details, the day-to-day details that you get in people's stories, that you will hear what other people have gone through, and you will see, and you will know that there is nothing too big for God when it comes to healing. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Well, okay, I was blown away. There was part 2. It is so exciting just to hear these stories of what God can do with a life that just decides, I'm going to give you everything right now. And that's what God did. He took everything and he blessed this girl big time. And what an amazing life that she has today. Everything that you need to know about Christine will be in the description below. She's doing some stuff, man. She is a mover and a shaker, and I'm so glad that we had her here, that you all got to meet her as well. If you want to help us with bringing these shows to you, please go to healingjourneystoday.com and donate. There is an endless supply of testimonies that will help you get delivered and set free from whatever it is that is stopping you from moving forward. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.